Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great, thank you so much. Apologies, having issues logging in today. If we can maybe start running through the questions we submitted, and we can then maybe debrief and go from there.
Okay. Is there any technical assistance that you need on our side?
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to get my main computer going during today's meeting, unfortunately.
Okay, gotcha. Do you want us to maybe pull up those questions onto the main screen so everyone can see them? Would that be helpful, Zach?
That'd be great. I sent some in Saturday and a couple that I missed this morning. So if we can maybe walk through, I think to start off with, maybe we could go through the budget parameter questions that you and Jerry had and go through the differences between the FY26 adopted budget and the current projections. I think that's maybe a good starting point, and then we can go through the other questions from there.
Okay, gotcha. And just to assist here, President Bulger, do we have those questions, or are we able to pull those questions up? I believe they were in the email that was on Saturday.
Yes, I received 2 emails, and I received one on Saturday and one very early this morning. And Kara's on the line, and Kara is going to bring up the questions and response. And if we can go through the questions that way, I think we've gotten to as many questions as we could in the time allowed. So, Kara?
Yeah, I'm pulling them up. 1 second. These are in no particular order, so hold on.
And once again, I just wanted to share my appreciation for staff, administration for putting this all together and answering questions, having this discussion. It's immensely appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so Zach, I know you can't see the screen here, but they are pulling up the questions and their answers to some of these questions. And Kara, as stated by the president, Kara is going to go through it. So we have the questions up right now, Zach. So.
Okay, thank you.
And Kara, yeah, you could just maybe state the question because Zach is not able to see anything.
Sure, and I'll summarize it instead of reading the document to you, and we're still working on refining and tweaking some things in here. As the President Bulger said, we did receive them. I received them since I was out this morning early. So we have answered what we can at this point. I'll start with what we just have in order of what we were sent. The first question is how the aviation program is currently funded, tuition, fees, state funding, and how is the funding split between Fund 1 and Fund 9. This one I'll kind of read through because it has a lot of details. The aviation program is funded through a combination of fees and tuition and instructional support. It includes several areas under the aviation program. It has maintenance and mechanic program and the drone program, which are currently in the general fund. So those are already in Fund 1. We do have the pilot program, which is the other section that we're talking about, that is in Fund 9. And the request in that, just to summarize, the request in the mitigation plan is to move that Fund 9 program from Fund 9 into general fund. Right now, that program is an instructional program that is in Fund 9. It is the only instructional program that's in Fund 9. I think there's a history to that I can't speak to. But it does receive right now differential fees, course fees, but it doesn't receive any of the community college support fund, property taxes, any of the other general fund support that you would normally see. And so moving that to the general fund would equalize it with any of our other instructional programs, but that cost would be about $350,000 in the first year, and it would continue all the other years. So it would, in essence, make that fair with all of our other instructional programs. What we do have built in Fund 9 is a revenue source that is about $2.26 million in Fund 9, and it has personnel and other expenditures. that is about $2 million. So it does have a little surplus in that fund year to year. However, because it runs in a deficit from year to year, it's just slowly paying off that deficit. So it's a positive program, but it is a program that does need that ongoing support to fund that. Was there other general questions? Because the rest of those are the cost of the program and how the funding is split and how it's fair to other programs. And should it be looked at? Are there programs that split funding between Fund 1 and Fund 9 that should be looked at in a similar fashion of fairness? This is the only instructional program in Fund 9. We have other programs in Fund 9, such as childcare, but that's different. It's not an instructional program. We have an international program, but that's not the instructional part of the international program. So we have other things in Fund 9, but they're not truly just student instruction. Does that help clarify what those questions were?
Kara, can I follow up on, you mentioned a revenue source within Fund 9. Is that for aviation, that revenue source, and that $2 million in expenditure, that is for aviation or a different program?
That's all for just the aviation program in Fund 9.
Okay, so they have some revenue that is separate and distinct from what other programs get, and that gets siloed within Fund 9, but they're currently not getting any general fund support at all for the piloting section, and that's what we were talking about moving over to Fund 1.
Correct. And when we move this to Fund 1, we will move all of that to Fund 1. So we will move all those revenues, tuition, it's like differential fees, course fees, all of that will move over to Fund 1 with all the expenses. The net impact to the general fund is about $350,000.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you to know that everything's moving over, not just the 350 differential.
Correct. Yep, the whole thing. Just so it's fair, like all the other, we have nursing that is run very similar. So it's going to be similar to all the other programs. So this is creating that fairness for aviation that we have in all the other programs.
Great, thank you.
Is that all the questions on that particular?
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. I'll lower my hand too. Yeah, no worries. No, thank you. And Kara, thank you so much for this. And I think you know this about me. This has always been a fascination of mine of why it's in Fund 9. And I think I'd love to find out why it was in Fund 9. Parts of me has a feeling that because we received like grants, and I know Peter DeFazio was, as our congressperson, was really a huge advocate for it and was able to get federal funds over to us for the aviation program for a multitude of different reasons and stuff. So that's my theory. But anyway, I'm really curious if we can get an answer to that at some point someday. That all being said, though, I do support it going into Fund 1 and so forth. But I just wanted to get clarification. Is it only the piloted aircraft program that is the aviation program, or does it also include the drone aviation program and the other, what was it, aviation mechanics? There's one that I'm missing there, but does essentially the aviation program include all those programs that would then go over to Fund 1?
Right now, what is already in Fund 1 is the aviation mechanics program, and the drone program are already in Fund 1. Those are already established in there. So it's just this particular one. And, it sounds like this, the aviation program, it has a lot of differential fees associated with it. It's a very expensive program. So it sounds like I'm getting a tip that, it was because it's a high cost program. They separated it out probably to, to monitor that funding stream.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And could we scroll down? There was a question that I just wanted to read the answer really quick. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's all the questions I have around the aviation program specifically.
Okay, no other aviation questions, I'm guessing. Let's keep going.
Are there draft answers that you can send to my email?
Yes, we're still tweaking them, Zach, but I'll make sure that President Bulger will get them out to you.
Okay, I just thought if you send them to me now, I could go along with them at the same time, but I'll just listen. Thank you.
The next one is the historic vacancy savings per year. What is the historic vacancy savings each year? The 10-year average is 2.1% from 2014 to 2023. In there was a high of 4.5% and a low of -2%. Fiscal year 24 was the lowest rate. I'm guessing the growth put everything over and we expanded the positions. The estimated vacancy savings this year for fiscal year 25, again, we budgeted the 1.7 million at the 1.5%, is less than 0.5% right now this year. We are looking at having in process, we have about 10 vacant positions in general fund, not all funds, because this is only talking about general fund. And all of those are in process at some point. So that's something we'll have to discuss and we'll be bringing back in February. But we are not seeing the same vacancy savings rates that we've seen in that historic average, partly because we've reduced positions that we have available on the roster, and partly because they're all full and we're not seeing the attrition we have in the past. Does that answer that part? There's some other questions in there. And just to add more context, what's also in there is we do have some positions, and we specifically are calling out on public safety because this is a great example. We have 2 public safety positions that are on our vacancy savings list. We have contractual obligations for our public safety staff. So when contractual being the union contract, the classified union contract, we have X amount of public safety officers we're supposed to have on staff at all times during hours, and there's certain parameters. When we do not have the staff to fill that, we do contract out, which is approved through our bargaining agreements. They're all approved processes. And we bring in those private contractors to help us fill that in. So some of those positions that are on that 10 list are also backfilled with other areas. I'll also use, we have finance positions that we've had vacant for a while that we did have contractors in. So even though the positions are vacant, we are using that, again, just making sure we're approved through our union agreements, and we're using that to backfill because they're services we have to finish. I see, Austin, you have a question, if I can call on you, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate that. And does these percentiles that you're using for the average, does that include both classified professionals, faculty, and administration?
Yes, it's all staff.
Thank you.
Yep.
All staff. Great. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. We don't have it tracked by separately by groups, just as one average.
Absolutely. So essentially anybody that's getting a W-2 through the college, or I apologize, let me rephrase this. So wherever we have vacancies in the college, we're calculating the wages from those, and that's the average that we're going with.
Yes, and specifically, we're talking about full-time FTE, not any part-time positions. Part-time positions are completely separate from this particular pot.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is there an accounting? I'm going to ask it like this: is there an accounting reason why that is? Is it because it's an uncontrolled variable, or like
a reason why we track the two separately?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, they're different parts of the agreement, and there are different requirements for us. For example, one of them, I would say from my standpoint, would be partly the ability to track those. So tracking position control and monitoring positions, you usually only do with your full-time FTE. For example, Jonathan and I just looked, we have 577 positions that are on this tracking list. We have probably equally that many in part-time people. So when you track FTE, we know we have 6 accounting positions that we will fill through the year, and we won't exceed that. But part-time will fluctuate depending on where it's needed, so you can't track it the same. So that's why this year you see we've allocated numbers, we've allocated budget numbers for those and say you monitor those based on your needs. So that's why you see that change, because we're saying there's this budget cap on those. Well, positions, they kind of fluctuate, and sometimes you have other needs that we have to fill. So they are tracked differently because the cost is very different, and the ability to track them in our system is different as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just for Zach's information, what it states here is the 10-year average is 2.1% from 2014 to 2023. With a high end of 4.5% and a low of -2%. In FY24, the rate was 2.3%. In FY25, it was 0 to 1. Just reading that and summarizing that for Zach so he knows.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Understood. And we will get these to you, Zach. I just want to make a few more tweaks.
It's very appreciated. Thank you very much for answering all this stuff.
Yeah, understood. The next one, would it make sense to fund a side account to cover vacancy savings so that if vacancy savings aren't realized in a given year, there are funds available that can be later replenished? I'm saying no, this is not a standard practice. Standard budgeting is to fund positions intended to be filled for the year, especially given the college has less positions available and majority of the positions are filled or in process to be filled. Again, the caution this year, which was part of our budget mitigation strategy for this year, was the vacancy savings of 1.7 we reduced. We're struggling to meet that 1.7 because we're at the vacancy savings rate. So it's not a good standard practice to fund vacancy savings. And in that essence, let me move on to the other questions because this might help. It says, or do we need to fund the full amount of vacancy savings every year? And yes, all the positions should be fully funded to create that financial stability. And the last question is, and where does the money go when there are vacancy savings? If general fund positions are fully funded and not filled, then the unused budget authority is automatically part of the ending general fund balance. In many circumstances, budget from another budget line item is used to backfill the role of the vacant position. And the example of that, just to add context, is like the public safety position. There are areas where if we have vacant positions, we do have an obligation to still fill those roles. So it also says this includes using part-time budgets to teach classes when faculty positions are vacant. And we've done that as well. We have retiring faculty as of the end of December, then we will move that budget over to the part-time budget to backfill that retired faculty member. So we do use that and it maneuvers around, and it also gives the flexibility of people like myself who have, like I said, accounting positions. We had 3 vacant that we did have to fill in order to stay on time for our audit. So we had an outside vendor that came in and helped us get on track. So it's maneuverable in those ways as well. So that's why it's just not a good idea to do that. And a side account wouldn't particularly be helpful, but it can be somewhat helpful if it just helps add to your ending fund balance if you don't need to fill those positions. And we also have other things that happen, such as there's, I think, twice a year in a classified bargaining contract where they can, staff can request to have their position reclassified, and that may not have been budgeted in originally, but I'm an accountant and maybe I've been working at a higher level doing other roles for some time. So I request my position to be reclassified, and then I'm granted that and I move up a nice step or two. And that is an unfunded liability that we're required to pay out. So all of those things help fill that financial stability that we're able to move around that we're not seeing this year. Is that helpful? Is there any questions there? Are there any questions there, I should say?
I got no questions on my side. Zach?
No, I have no answers, but my question is answered.
Okay, and this is the part I'm not quite finished with, and I'll try to go through how does the state funding allocation growth limits for LCC interact with growth rates of other colleges? And I'm just going to read through all the questions that you had on your email, Zach. It was stated previously, our state funding allocation is limited to approximately 1.5% to 2% growth based on enrollment each year. Is this increase calculated from the college's baseline or in relation to other colleges? And since the average increase in enrollment for community colleges was 3.5% this year, by only growing at 2%, does LCC risk falling behind other colleges and reducing our share of the state funding allocation below the 8% level? Do we need to grow at 1.5% to 2% above the average to maximize our increase in the state funding, or is growing at 2% enough? And should the college set a goal of increasing its share above 8% by a target date, and what should this goal be? please provide the actual funding formula calculation and associated rules if possible. This is what I'm still working through, so that's why I have it just at the questions. I'm curious and I wanted to follow up with the average increase in enrollment for community colleges was 3.5%. And I'm curious where that statistic came from, just to make sure I'm working off the right information.
That is a good question. I believe I heard that from Brett or from the news, but I will have to go back and find the source for that particular statistic.
No,
it's in the OCCA, not annual report, but there's the reports that come out from OCCA, and it was in the last one. I want to say it was in November, but it might be October issue for OCCA.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it now. Kira, if I find it, can I forward it to the president to forward to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, please send it to me. That would be great.
And let
Of
me,
course. Oh, yeah.
yeah, that I would appreciate that. And that I'm not saying I don't know that it's true or not, just curious, because this year they're, I do talk with all the community college partners and they seem to be all over the board. So I'm just interested to see where that comes from. The areas I'm going to do a little speculation when we're talking about limited to 1.5% to 2% growth each year. And I think that's what we're referring to with partly the growth cap. And one of the things that I'm addressing is, the president's goal is the managed enrollment growth, because we have those limitations in the community college support fund, right? We have the growth cap, which was 2.53 last year and the year before. What I'll say for this year, tentatively, they have it at 1.07%, but they are still discussing whether or not that should stay or it should be different. So they're on a statewide discussion of what does the growth cap look like? Is it okay to lift it this year? And no decisions have been made, and they're still working through that at the statewide level. But what I'll say is, we're right in there with that growth cap rate. What I'll say for us I've run through the numbers, and Zach, your question, I think it was your question about getting above 8%. The college used to be at 10%. I think I looked back, it was back to 2014, 2015, and then it decreased to 9% at one point, then went down to 8%. We've stayed pretty steady at that. Because of that growth cap, a lot of factors have to come into play for us to drop below that 8% and us to go above that 8%. And I've run through a lot of different scenarios and how we can get there, but for the foreseeable future and how all the community colleges are growing very similarly, I don't see achieving that moving beyond that 8% goal at this point. I think other things have to change to make that happen, as in other community colleges have to quit growing and have almost a negative growth below what they can. And we would have to be able to go beyond that to move that needle really thoughtfully. That's why that part was concerning to me. But to stay within that growth cap, one of the president's goals that we've discussed is growing at what the growth cap is plus 2%. So we can achieve a little beyond that, because that's what managed enrollment growth would be, is can we afford to grow beyond what we're funded to grow? Because at the statewide level, and I can say this just from being on the semi-start of this work group that actually begins this month, is that they don't want to water down what an FTE is that gets funded at a community college level. If you just allow it to grow at whatever you want, it's still one pot that's split between all the FTEs. So they're saying we want to be thoughtful about what that FTE is funded. So even if they only have $100 million and they have 100,000 enrollments, that's still funded at what, 10,000 per FTE. They don't want that limit to be so low that it's not affordable for colleges to maintain. So there's a lot of intricacies that go behind that, and it's not easy to say, here's just the calculation. I can walk through the calculation. I can show you how the growth cap is. It's a 3-year roll. So we started growing back up again. I want to say 22, 23, 24, definitely 23, 24. And our enrollment, our percent is based on 40% last year, 30% the year before, and 30% the year before. So we're still catching up to capturing that higher growth enrollment. And if we start to dip down, it takes longer for us to decrease that. So it still stays pretty steady around that 8%. What also is included in the entire formula is what you collect in your local property taxes. That is part of the total public, if you ever hear TPR, it's total public resources. It includes what you get from the CCSF and what you get from property taxes. Well, we have a healthier property tax collection than Mount Hood. So even though we're larger than Mount Hood, we get less community college support funds because our property taxes collect more. So when there's a reduction in the state allocation, we have more reduced in our state allocation because we have more property taxes in our total public resources. They reallocate the whole thing. So that's why a 5% reduction at the state level is still a 7% for us. So it's a more complicated formula than I can just lay out on there. There's a lot of scenarios, so I don't want to lead people in the wrong way, but I don't want to give an illusion that we should say we'll get to 9% because there's a lot of factors in there. Sorry, Austin.
Oh, absolutely nothing to be sorry about. No, I really appreciate what you just said there in regards to the calculation there. So there's a difference between what is charged in property taxes and what is collected. And we go off of what is collected. But in the past budgets, have we been going off of what is collected versus what is charged? Am I making sense with that? Because there's the property tax statement, but then that doesn't necessarily mean that the county is collecting every penny of that, because some people are going through hard economic times and stuff like that. They might be having a payment plan instead of, or something like that. So are we going off of what is collected or what is charged? I hope I'm making sense with that question.
Yeah, we are estimating what is collected. So if you go to a county and look at what they call the 4A, that's going to tell you the maximum we could capture based on what the property tax assessment is. What I'll say is for Lane County, which is probably 98% of what we collect, we actually have 4 counties we collect from. It's probably, our collection rate is around 96 to 97%, which is not bad. However, the state allocation of total public resources is based on the whole total expected collection. So it's based on 100% collection rate. But what we build in the budget for property tax expectations of revenue, which is what's required in Oregon budget law, what you expect to receive. We should never expect to receive 100% of what a county assesses, because that's just not, I've never seen that happen in my 2 decades. So we would never want to expect that because it doesn't happen, but we do know what an average collection rate is.
Got it. And we have an average collection rate estimated, or a prediction of 94, or was it 95?
It's about 96. It's about
96. It's 96. Okay, gotcha. So that's the predicted collection rate over the next 3 years.
Yeah, and what we also do is we use an expectation of what the history of collection looks like, right?
Okay.
We know the last several years we've collected this. The most on average you can increase property tax assessment is 4%. That's why 4% is generally used for that. So it's all those factors. And what I'll say is, when you look at forecasting or budget expectations, it's not uncommon to be a little high and a little low in each area. The point is at the average. And this is where, when we presented to the board, we said we were within less than 1% of our total projection of forecast of last year, because there were some areas that we saw that were really high and some that were low, and they kind of level out to that. So that's why we try to narrow that down as closely as possible. But there are usually some differences which are to be expected. There's a lot of factors that come into play.
Got it. Thank you. I'll lower my hand.
Does that give enough to help? And I'll keep working on these questions. These ones are more complex, so I'll gather some more information. But does that give enough for this section to work through?
Yeah, thank you. There was some
Oh, then the other
assumptions
one.
and sorry, what was that?
No, go ahead.
Oh no, this actually helped me a lot with various assumptions as we go into the next year and the preceding years and so forth. So yeah, that actually was very helpful. So thank you on my part. Thank you.
The other piece that, sorry, was there a question?
I believe Zach wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just trying to follow up. It sounds like whether or not we're growing at the maximum, the rate that will achieve maximum state reimbursement is a complicated one, and we don't quite know yet because the growth cap for the year is potentially going to change, and so it's a dynamic environment that is changing.
Yes, I think that would be accurate. And yeah, we should know within the next 2 or so months what the growth cap will actually be finalized with. And I'll make sure through President Bolger, we keep you informed.
Thank you.
The other question that came up is what is a reasonable aspirational target for enrollment growth? What level enrollment would enable the institution to stabilize its finances and fully fund maintenance and other services? Is the 8,500 FTE target suggested by a consultant in spring of 2023 or another number? How long will it take to get there? And there was a blue ribbon team that came in and did that evaluation before I got here of 2023 is my understanding. And I know when they presented it, what they had said, this is a generality. And this is something I have talked about with the board is they said you have 200 full-time faculty, you should be able to have 8,500 FTE. The challenging part to that is it was a generality. And so the concern is twofold. One, you're saying that all the courses would have very similar fill rates. And we have, for example, nursing courses that don't have the same fill rate as maybe, I don't want to use, I keep using examples that are not good examples, but could be, what's a simple class? I'm going to say art. And maybe arts is allowing you to have 30 students in one course, but nursing is 20. And for those in art and nursing, I'm just using those as examples and we'll pretend that they're true. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but we have faculty that can only teach in certain areas. You can't have a nursing faculty teaching an art class and vice versa. So if we were able to interchange all of those faculty, it would be easy to say we could get to 8,500 with the faculty we have. We also have a change in CTE courses versus the transfer courses. It sounds like they're really close to almost even, but they have very different needs. We have welding courses that don't allow you to have a similar structure as a math class. They're just not the same. So what we are doing is working through financial modeling and coming up with what those fill rates might be, and then working with each area to kind of hone in on what those fill rates should look like so that not only are we breaking even on each of those courses, but at what point do we add more courses and at what point can we literally create this cost-effective system, because there are some areas that are more costly than others, but they balance each other out. And so it's important to have those factors in there. So we have to continue that work, keep refining that data and work through that financial modeling and work through the system. But until then, we are still working on continued managed enrollment growth and creating what the president's goals are of having at least, 2% growth was our budget goal this year. And we're still working on developing what the recommendation is for next year. And certainly something we'll talk about with the board, the full board later this week. Is there anything you wanted to add, President Bolger?
Thank you.
Okay.
No, Kara, I think you did a nice job explaining that. I wonder if there are any questions from the subcommittee.
Well, question in regards, so if you're saying that 8,500 FTE target suggested by the the consultants is not an accurate number because we're not considering those other considerations, such as fill rates of different types of programs. And it makes sense to me, at least, that why nursing, for instance, would be 20 students, because it's really complex and so forth. And there's a lot of one-on-one attention towards medical services, techniques, terminology, so on and so forth for teaching in that situation. But do we have an actual number for that we can safely or a range or anything like that? If it's not 8,500.
And that's the part where when we work through the financial modeling, because the college has never done financial modeling to the level that we're doing on. I think it's been I've seen some historical, I'll say, some staff have told me, well, there used to be a dashboard out there that allowed you to do that. I haven't been able to find that data. So if there is something, it's not something I've seen, but we are working on creating that financial modeling to say, here's what it could be. And you have to make a lot of assumptions when you do that. We're going to have to say that every class has to be filled at 90%, every class. And so those are a lot of things that culturally we need to socialize and we need to work through with all of our deans and make sure that we're building the right assumptions on all of those. So it's taking more time, but we certainly don't want to release anything that would give an artificial number that doesn't work. What I can tell you is we do want to keep building off what we had in 26. So 26, I just looked, I think the actual FTE was close to 6,700. IR could tell us more details, but we will keep growing those percentages on those and keep working from there and then keep refining what that financial modeling is doing. And that's why it's good to pause, see where we're at and really evaluate what those courses look like. And it also depends as we continue working through, our bargaining process, what things might look like.
Gotcha. Yeah. And Zach, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Zach, but essentially what the basis of this question was, we saw our recession high, so 2008, I believe, FTE. We saw that high for our institution, and then it over the decade continued to go down, essentially, to where we then got to our lowest level. And then and now we've been growing now and so forth, and not necessarily an expectation of getting back to that recessionary high that we had back then, but that your intention of this question was to get an idea of how much capacity we have to grow over the next 3 years. Is that kind of what I was hearing? That's what I was hearing, Zach. Am I missing something there?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think that we all want to be able to fully fund the full suite of services that we offer, but also to be funding things like deferred maintenance. And one of my expectations, I don't know if it's accurate, is that if we have more students paying tuition, we're getting more state funding, that would be additional dollars that we could allocate towards buildings and things like that that need to get spread across the entire campus body to pay for. If we have a big campus body, we can pay for more different means and things like that. I'm 100% accurate that more students, leads to more money put towards shared expenses like that. That's the process of if we have students, if we're getting more tuition, more state dollars, that would hopefully put us in a better position to fund some of those types of costs that are currently not fully funded.
I understand. Yeah, I hear.
Before we continue, I just wanted to ask Jerry, how are you doing over there?
Doing fine. I'm all ears.
Excellent.
Thank you for leading the way.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question then, unless there's more questions. Okay. What are the differences between the fiscal year 26 adopted budget from June and the current projections? The current projections estimate a shortfall of around 500K for a targeted vacancy savings of 1.7 million. Options to address this shortfall will be presented to the board in February when the college will present the updated forecast. The early indications are showing no improvement there. Spending in M&S is higher than anticipated due to facilities costs and higher than anticipated inflation. Part-time faculty expenditures will be higher due to increased demand in some program areas and contractual commitments for engagement in indirect instruction areas. So we will continue to report on that. You'll see that in our quarterly reporting. And there is a sheet that I include in there that shows the adopted budget versus what we're projecting. So you can see that in that line item detail. I'm certainly happy to go through that. Long story short, really personnel is where we're projecting to be overspent in this area at this point. So again,
Kara, if I could follow up. So it sounds like I think there was two differences. It sounds like so. One is that the beginning fund balance for the year is different than what we were originally projecting. Is that because the audit came in and showed that we had a different amount than we were expecting, or is that something else?
The beginning fund balance, I think, was a little lower than we anticipated, and it's when the fiscal year closed. It's not necessarily related to the audit. It's when the whole fiscal year closes, how our expenses finalize. And that was part of when I say we're within 1%, we collected a little more revenue and then spent a little more in some of the areas, but we're still within 1%. But our ending fund balance was slightly less than what we budgeted as an ending fund balance. But what we're focused on, though, in our forecast for this year is the in-year revenue and in-year expenses. So when I say we're looking at 500, I think it's 550,000. I'll update that in there, but that we're just looking at in-year revenue and in-year expenses. So that's been my first goal. Is just go ahead. Yeah.
And the in-year deficit, it sounds like, is related to that we're not achieving the vacancy savings that we had originally included in the original budget.
Correct.
And that we're coming in at 0.5% instead of 1.5%, and that's the differential that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, keep going. What is more important for external ratings like the Composite Financial Index, Moody's, and accreditors that the college restore the 10% ending fund balance, reduce sub-fund deficits, or increase reserves? These items are not independent of each other. Restoring the ending fund balance will improve the Composite Financial Index, the CFI rating. It will improve the Moody's ratings that are the concern of financial stability. And the areas are all actually interrelated. So when you pay off internal deficits to yourself, your ending fund balance will improve. When you create an internal reserve, your ending fund balance will also improve. So all of those are really interrelated to each other. They're not one or the other that we have to pick over one another. What I'll say is restoring that 10% ending fund balance will greatly help us with our CFI rating and will help us, I can't say greatly, it will help us with the CFI rating, and it will help us with all of our Moody's rating because we will have reserves, we will have established, and we will met our board policy requirement of 10%. So they do all interrelate. I think we don't have to pick one. Focusing on one will improve the others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I guess, the idea was simply that if folks are going to be focused more on the 10% ending fund balance, would it make sense to, prioritize paying off that 10% ending fund balance before starting to fund a side reserve or accelerating our pay down of Fund 9 deficits? Would it make sense to prioritize one over the other? Whereas the current approach is sort of a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Would it make more sense to front load the 10% ending fund balance restoration and maybe backload the other items was thought process. It sounds like the balanced approach is a reasonable one, and that there wouldn't be a real reason to move to really front load the ending fund balance repayment.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I'll say is if we can get that 3-year plan approved and both pay off our sub-fund deficits and restore that 10% ending fund balance, we are setting the college up to be really successful, especially investing in those areas such as deferred maintenance and in any one time unexpected costs that come forward. But it will definitely set us up for that financial stability, and then really be thoughtful about strategically investing in all the other areas. So yeah, I understand your question. Yeah. That's why in 3 years it would, we would accomplish all of that. We would be in a really fiscally sound position to do all those things.
Yeah. So it does sound like you will take us, introducing some additional information. I think that's being subsidized with mine and what the stabilization plan is there, and is the extra $1 million here enough to pay that off in the 3 years it's listed. So hopefully we'll have a lot more clarity once that Fund 9 stabilization plan comes out of what the pathway is for that set of issues.
I'm just struggling to hear what you were saying. I'm not sure if you can repeat it or if you want to send it in as follow-up question. I'm not sure if Austin, were you able to capture what he was saying?
I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, there was some gerbling there. I apologize. Zach, can you repeat that one more time?
Just that it sounds like we will know a lot more in the spring when we receive the Fund 9 stabilization plan about what the timeline for repayment to fully restore those sub-fund deficits will be once we have that fiscal 9 stability plan in place. Yeah, I think we're good on this.
Yeah, and part of that again will include those 4 areas that I'm saying we're developing the plans that either require ongoing general fund or other decisions to be made. And so I have those included on your other information requests that we'll get to you, but that's the printing and graphics program, the dental restorative clinic downtown, and we have a general fund talent grants program and our student health clinic. So those 4 areas specifically we'll be discussing come March.
Okay.
Okay, I think I skipped down a little bit. Creditors, okay. What reporting is there on status and outcomes for the programs in Lane Forward? It's good that that question came up. We are looking at presenting the Lane Forward projects at a later date. We just need to give everybody an opportunity to get all that information together, and we're looking at a reallocation of that in fiscal year 2028. So 2027 is really that break-even year, as we've talked about, trying to get back to some sustainability and then refocusing that. But we're also giving people opportunities to get that fund spent and bring their plans forward. So more information will come. We'll bring that forward. Did you have anything to add, President Bolger? No, just making sure.
No, the Lane Forward Fund is part of the strategic investment around innovation. I think we had in that bucket also programs, I think, also new program development. It's all within innovation and making sure that the college is moving forward and responsive to community workforce needs and university needs, other needs as well. So that's what it's all about.
Okay, a couple follow-ups. So if I understand correctly, the Lane Forward Fund is effectively being zeroed out for FY27 before being brought back in FY29. Is that the current status?
But currently, it's not being allocated in 26 or 27. There are existing awards out there given to staff in the college, and they are still working on those programs. So what we've done is allocate them like grants. They have them out there like grants. They're still continuing to spend them. So we do still have lane forward projects in the works. We wanted to give an opportunity for them to finish that out this year, see how it's going, reevaluate it, and then bring it back. And so there are still lane forward projects that are happening, but we didn't allocate any new projects in 26 or 27.
Okay, and then what type of reporting has previously, it sounds like there's something in the works for this year, but I guess what type of reporting either previously or that you're thinking about for this year does each of the awardees submit on, an annual basis? Do they submit like a one-page status update and here's what the outcomes are? How are you thinking you're going to compile that information and share the, what's been funded and what the status of outcomes are with the board?
Yeah, and I can speak conceptually to this because it's not my area, but I've seen the allocations and the awards. So we are treating them literally like grant programs where they submit a request, they put specific measurables in there, they tell us what they're going to spend that on, it goes to a committee, the committee does an evaluation, makes the recommendations to the president, and then the president authorizes those awards. So it's done very similar to a grant program. So I would expect they have, a report back just like any grant program has. So I think that's what we'll see.
Okay, yeah, if we could just confirm that, I would love to see that on an annual basis. So here's what this awardees, here's the previous year's awardees and the status and any outcomes until they complete their award and do their final report out. That would be very valuable from my perspective.
Well, I really appreciate you asking the question. That's something that's generally done internally, and but I will certainly communicate with the board about the status of those at the time when we have outcomes to report.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated.
Austin, you have a question? Oh, is he froze?
Or am I good?
You're getting there, I think.
Am I frozen?
There you go.
Hopefully.
Now you're okay.
Yep, we're okay. Good. Yeah, no, I remember when we first implemented the Lane Forward program, and I was really excited, especially when President Bulger, when you brought this up for our consideration and so forth. But yeah, I will say that the board could benefit substantially from getting report backs from these results. Yeah, and I thought there was already results from some of them, but what I'm hearing is that we don't have results as of yet from some of the grants that we've awarded. I want to make sure I heard you correctly, President Bulger.
I think what you're recalling is the innovation presentation that was done in June of last year. There were projects that were supported by the Lane Forward Fund that were talked about during that. You might remember what did we call it? An amphitheater, I believe it is. It's a pretty exciting project coming. It's a collaboration, art, welding, other programs. So that's one of them. But that project, for example, is not completed. So, but there were other projects that were talked about as having received some funds from the Lane Forward Fund. So, yeah. So yeah. The board
Gotcha.
has received some information more about progress than about completion of some of these projects.
Got it. And were all these projects more like internal, or did we use any outside organizations to either partner with, or did we award any outside organizations or anything like that? Or have we just kept this mainly internal?
The Lane Forward Fund is an internal fund, and it was designed to catalyze innovation. When I came in, the college, I was the post-pandemic president. The college was working its way out of COVID and back into operations. And I saw a need to motivate and inspire the institution. Plus, innovation is one of the values of Lane Community College. So I started this Lane Forward Fund. And what it also required was to have units across the institution to work together on a project that advanced priorities of the institution. In the recent years, it's really focused on student success because that's our North Star, is about student success. And so the Lane Forward Fund is about creativity, it's about experimentation, it's about trying out things, and it's about seeing what might work. So this gives the institution an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, the value and the guiding star of innovation there. That's and I greatly appreciate that aspect of it. Zach, I'm trying to remember if there was speaking of the student success side of things and having these funds being internally used. Zach, there was something that you said that was funded out of the Lean Forward. It had something to do with. I apologize. I do not have it in my notes, and I don't have it memorized. Was there a fund there was something that was funded that you were really interested in through the Lane Forward? Is that correct, Zach? Do you remember what we were talking about last time?
I'm not positive what you're referring to.
Okay.
When we initially approved the Lane Forward Fund, one of the proposed awards was to set up the year-round enrollment system, which is
that's what it was. Yep, that's exactly what. Yep, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah.
To support, but I think we funded 15 to 30 different awardees since then, and just don't feel like I know what's going on with those awards. And so would love to have enough information to feel like I know that those funds are being well spent and that we're getting positive outcomes as a result.
Yeah, and in additional context is those were originally awarded as 2-year awards. Some of them I think took 2 full years and some of them didn't. So this will be the first round of what they're completing because the timeline of it is creating that. So this is on their natural timeline for what those award designations would be and what their completion is. So I got a little note that we are anticipating, 1 to 2 page completion. And Zach, I can say that we do have annual registration this year. So the great thing is that, money well spent that we do have that going. But yeah, as President Bolger said, we'll get more information for that. Does that help with that?
Thank you.
Section? Yeah. Okay. On increasing part-time budgets for sections, please explain in a little more detail this proposed investment and why it's needed. Using the forecast as a starting point of the next 3 years financial outlook, the part-time expenditure budget increases by approximately $700,000 in 2027. That's 6%, just for the record, I'll add that in there. Using the last 2 years as a baseline, the increase in the part-time expenditures were almost 16.7% each year. So because the forecast is only 6% increase, in order to invest in the enrollment growth we're seeing, we need to invest in those part-time courses to have similar growth. So if we're using the forecast, just to recap, if we use the forecast that's on that 1-page sheet, for 2027, which is the year we're kind of focused on right now, it only has 6% growth. And we've heard a lot about staying within our part-time budget allocation this year was a struggle, even though we increased that budget well over $2 million from the previous budget allocation. People feel like that still wasn't ample enough. And so to continue that with that growth, we need to strategically build that in to do that part-time section growth. Does that help?
And just so for clarification, that the part-time sections are allocated and funded differently than sections that are taught by full-time faculty?
Yes. Yes and no. The salary expectation was put on all of those categories, which was 6%, right? 6% is what we've seen the last few years. And last 2 years, it's been almost 6%. So we're saying that we expect the growth between COLA, steps, classifications, changes in staff is 6%. But we expect that part-time budget growth to be higher than 6% because it's been more like 16%. So we need to build that in to allow that growth to happen.
And that 6% average, was that 16%, part of that average, or was that excluded from that average?
Well, that 16% included 6%. So that still left a 10% gap. So normally the last 2 years, I'm saying the last 2 years, that part-time budget, if I just put it together, all of part-time budgets grew about 16% for both years on average, the last 2 years. And we grew in the forecast that budget by 6%. So I'm saying 6% isn't enough in that part-time area. We need to up that more. So that's why we included an additional amount in that plan.
Okay, so you think the current projection of 6% is too low, and that it should actually be higher?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Looks like Jerry has his hand up.
Oh,
I'm
missed
okay.
that.
I would just, no problem. No question.
No question. Okay. What are the
I didn't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I apologize. I do have a question though.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure Jerry had his question answered before me, because I feel like I've been talking a lot here, so I'm trying to step back a little bit. So with that calculated, so here's the question: is that assumed, that COLA increase, is that assumed in our reserve calculation as well? Because I asked last time in regards to, what is the number and what do we need to get to? And I believe it was stated that we were at 8 million something. And which in my head is like, okay, that means we got 2 million to go to get to the 10% reserve that we are shooting for. So is that why there's an increased calculated effect with the new reserve amount? I'll just call it reserve amount in the preceding years, or in the years to come. Does that question make sense?
Maybe say it again. Let me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because in your presentation on the 17th, you stated that our reserve fund was currently at 8 million something, and that our reserve needs to be at 10.2 million. And so that essentially what that was stating was, okay, so we need 2 million to get to our reserve amount. But then when we were looking at the document in this last meeting, we were looking at how that number was drastically increasing from 10 million to get to reserve to 12 million, so on and so forth. And so that's, and I'm asking is that cost of living increase calculated in that new reserve number that we need to reach in the future years?
When you're saying reserve number, are you talking about like the ending fund balance?
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The amount for the ending fund balance for us to be at that 10%.
I think I'm catching what you're saying, but let me clarify. So as we go out in future years, and I think Zach kind of hit on this on your meeting on Friday that I was able to listen to this morning. As the budget increases, that 10% number would also increase because it's 10% of your expenditure budget. And so if our budget grows by 3 million a year, within 3 years, that's another 9 million. So it's another 900,000 you would need in a 10% ending fund balance. So I think that's what you're saying. So as the budget grows, the 10% grows because 8 million today is not the same as 8 million in 3 years because it's not going to be the same percentage. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And the reason why I'm asking this question, and kind of like at a base level to start off with, is because I'm trying to understand all the assumptions going into this, because I mean, we are doing a hypothetical guess of what these numbers are going to be and so forth. And I'm trying to kind of and align that with the policy in regards to the 10% and where the budget's going to be, where we could potentially be, and so forth. So I'm just trying to understand all the assumptions that are going into those increases. And yes, and the COLA is one of them. And And are there others that we need to know about as far as the assumptions that are being made in those increases?
Well, and I think that comes into question 10. Walk through the assumptions from the budget parameters document and the
Yeah.
investments listed. So first is the LCC allocation of state funds. Second, percent credit enrollment changes. C, the revenue factor. D, total personnel increase, and E, personnel vacancy rate. And let me share maybe a different, let me open a different document, which would be that baseline forecast that we've talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, we went through this document. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Let me stop this share and then start a new one. Okay, I gotta move people so I can see you. So you can see this forecast, right?
Yes.
And these assumptions. So these are the assumptions that are built in that forecast, and you have theyese on that one-page sheet. They're certainly something we've talked about. This is literally full transparency of what we have built in all of these factors. So the LCC percent of allocation stays at, it goes to 8% throughout the year. The thing that everyone needs to understand is come the out years, so 26, 27 are one biennium of the state allocation. This is where we were told in October that we may be able to, and we maybe should be anticipating a 5% reduction. So at that time, it was 2.5 million. This year, 2.5 million in 27. So 26, 27, we may see up to $5 million reduced out of our state payment. We won't know that until what, February or March. I'm sure Brett has more pulse on that. But that's not included in this mitigation plan. So it's also one of the triggers that I say, if there's some change in the state funding that's more than 3%, which this would be more than 3%, you will see me with a new mitigation plan through the president. So if that happens, we have to reevaluate where we're at and redo that. But in addition, what I really need people to understand is we're building in a 5.84%, which is similar to last biennium, an increase in the Community College Support Fund, which if you were at the OCCA, and helped lobby for that, that was a lot to lobby to get to 5.84%. We know the landscape will look differently. We may not see 5.84%. So that's concerning. And that's why I really keep emphasizing you will see us every year bring back this mitigation plan, because that is likely a factor that we may not see happen. We don't have a different number to put in there, but we can certainly evaluate that. So 28 and 29 are built on a higher forecast than maybe we'll see. So if the state cuts the payments in 26, 27, the base payment is even lower on the 5.84% that you even get the next year. So keeping all those factors in mind, that's why it's really important to do that yearly evaluation. So that's concern point number 1, right? Number 2 is this credit enrollment change. We're keeping it at 2%. And if the institutional research department were here, they'd be like, we're a little concerned because there's changes happening, in the landscape of all colleges, which everyone's discussed before. But one of the changes is financial aid. The allocation for financial aid and part-time students will look different next year. And we may see less part-time students. So that's concerning. So we have to keep a pulse on that. We do know our fall enrollment was at, I think, 2.3%. We are not seeing that kind of growth in our winter term to date. So they're still working that out, still coming up with those numbers, but that may even be aspirational. So that's always that's why they're blue. They're kind of target points. So the student credit enrollment is built on that 2%. So tuition rate change, this is certainly something the board will be weighing in and have decisions. The current HEPI was just produced, it's 3.6%. It's a little bit higher. We will have student groups come and have discussions. They're kind of worried about a 3.6% increase. So we'll have that discussion and move that forward. But the way it stands, we're looking at a $5 per credit increase each year. So it's whether or not the board wants to support that much of an increase or not. And again, You know, right now we're the second highest tuition in the state, but we're still kind of up there on the high end. So I'll just keep putting that out there. So the revenue factor, it's at 3.5%. If you look, what we're forecasting this year, this is an actual number, is about 2.3%. So we're forecasting revenue a little higher than what we're seeing this year so far. So the year's not finished yet. And that will include property taxes. That'll include some of the other areas. And again, that's part of projections. You're high in some areas and low in some others.
Kara,
Yes.
point of clarification. When will you know what the collection rate has been for a given, I guess, property tax year?
Well, honestly, you don't know for sure till August, when you really close that property tax year, but we have some pretty good data that majority of our property tax collection does come through by January. I think when I first came here, I went and looked at this county and the area. Some majority is already going to have happened by then, but there's still a lot of changes between then and the end of the year that can happen, especially we get federal forest fees from Lane County. That's almost 200,000. That fluctuates year to year, but that doesn't come in till July, and it does count towards this year. So it really does take later in the year, but we will, we'll know majority of what we have by March, because February is going to be the last, the collection of that month. But it does fluctuate until the end of the year. There are some fluctuations.
And you are expecting it to, the 2.3% number, that's maybe lower than the prior year and the historical sort of expectation. Where is that 2.3% estimate coming from?
Well, it also comes from other things. We have indirect costs that come into there. We have administrative recovery. There's other things that come into that particular pot as well. And that's just, just as an average, what we're forecasting right now, what we're seeing. And certainly in February, we can talk about that a little more. In February, we'll bring you an updated forecast to see what revenue looks like, which will have more property taxes. So we can talk about that a little more then, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be appreciated. That was one of the in-year growth for that one was one of the ones I was wondering about. And so, yeah, just some additional information when it's available would be appreciated.
Yeah. And it's also something, if as a board, if you're looking at the community in the area, one big piece that can affect property taxes is any companies or big corporations that you see in the area, if they're closing down, that will definitely affect our property taxes. So if you happen to hear of any of those or see of any of those will be things that will be more impactful. And we're seeing that a lot in the Portland, Multnomah area, when Nike moves out, Dutch Brothers moves out, and all of those, they'll affect their property taxes. So, those are the things we definitely want to keep our eye out for.
Thank you.
More than you want. So the next one, total personnel increase. You can see, 25, we did see a 6.1% increase. This year, we're seeing 4.7% based on our increase. That's an actual. What we did see is we did reduce positions this year, so that made that a little bit less. We are projecting 6% for the next following years because our average of the last 2-3 years is over 6%. And again, that includes everything. We did relabel it because I think at one point this had COLA in it, but it isn't just COLA. So I want people to kind of reframe their brain. This is just personnel increases. It includes the cost of living. It includes any step increases, which both of our contracts have tentatively built into it. We're still bargaining one, but even management positions have that built in, and any reclassifications, any changes in positions. Sometimes when one person leaves a position, they may find that when we rewrite that position, maybe it's a higher classification. It includes a gamut of all of those things. So 6% is, we did have it at 7% when we talked about this last year. We moved it down to 6%. Anything lower than 6% will not fund our fiscal year 27 roster as it stands right now. So I just want to caution people, we can move that number down to 4%. We can move that number down to 5%. But when we build a budget, I'm already telling you that our existing roster is higher than any of those numbers. So we have put that there on purpose to fund the positions we have on the roster today. So just to be clear. Non-salary, which is M&S, is built at 3%. That's going to include your inflation and all of those areas. And that's going to be cost of paper, cost of fuel. There's a whole variety of things, utilities, everything is wrapped up in that number, everything not personnel related. We do have the other personnel expenses rates. We have full-time and part-time. We have 65% for next year and 39%. We are dipping them back down to 64 and 38 in the following years. We do have, I think you've heard Jonathan and myself both talk about the PERS bond payments that are coming in. We kind of have a double end of that in 27, 28. So we need to make sure we're funding that and maybe can move that down. We are going to look at an evaluation of how that's working out and how those positions are funding and how's that's ferreting out. But that includes everything that we've talked about on there, which includes health insurance. PERS and health insurance are the two biggest pieces that come out of there, but it also includes tuition waivers for staff and staff families if they have that, workers' comp, unemployment, the Oregon PFMLA program. I mean, all of those come out of that OPE rate. And that's assessed to all of our positions on the campus, whether they're federally funded, general funded, grant funded. We also have the same thing, student OPE rate, 10%. This personnel vacancy rate, we moved down to 1%. You see we had seen 1.5%. Again, we have less positions. We are not seeing 1% this year. We're seeing less than 0.5%. Like I said, we currently have 10 positions out of 576 that are open, but they're all in a process. And then you have this underutilization rate, which is saying, if I have a $5,000 M&S budget, maybe I only spend $4,900 of it. That's just a terrible example. That's what the underutilization rate is. So these are the factors in the forecast. And yes, we are using this forecast to build the mitigation plan because there's no other better method to make sure that we can get to that 10% ending fund balance without using a forecast. So unless there's some other ideas of a better way to do that, we have to forecast to see where we're at. We have to see what our trends are. We have to project where we're going to be. And the goal is to do things a little differently to create that stabilization that we're looking for. So that's why we're using these methods. We've gone through them pretty detailed to come up with the most reasonable estimates we can. Are there questions about these?
Could I ask what the COLA was that you used last time with this year for this budget?
This is a built-in total personnel rate based on the last few averages. So it's a total rate.
Was it the same as the year before?
We used statistical patterns from previous years. We used averages.
Jerry, are you asking what was the amount last year?
Yeah, the percentage. You said 8%. I heard you say 8%, Austin.
I didn't. I didn't say 8%.
What is the COLA that you used a year ago when you were forecasting?
I think we used 7%. We may have used 7% last year. Is that you're asking what we forecasted last year?
Yeah.
I can find it for you. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was 7% though.
Okay, it's not urgent. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, I can find it though.
Okay.
Okay, I'll stop that share. That is all the questions I had in the document. Oh, I think Zach, you might be asking something, but I think I missed it.
Okay. I think in our last budget, the FY26 budget, under Fund 1, contingencies for reserves, yeah, 48,000, excuse me, 48,000 for contingencies for projects / provisions, and 3.5 million for reserve revenue shortfall. Those are there for.
Zach, we're having trouble with your connection. We can't understand at all. Can you repeat that?
Okay.
It's still the same.
That's still gerbil. Yeah.
Question, Austin.
Do you want to put something in the chat? Is the chat working? Would you like to try the chat?
Yeah, he won't be able to do chat because he's on the phone.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So can you hear that I'm asking about reserve funds? Can you just talk about the college's reserves?
We can hear you a lot better now. Zach, we can hear you a lot better now.
Okay.
Go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, I was hoping you could just talk about what reserves the college currently has, specifically the reserve for revenue shortfall and the contingencies for projects / provisions in Fund 1 from FY26 budget.
Yeah, that was a question on there. It got stuck between those two. The college doesn't have a specific reserve. Now, in the budget, you will see that there's a reserve section that's allocated in the budget, and that's really part of the ending fund balance. So in what I can see in the college history, we don't have a formal reserve. What you see is the 3% required ending fund balance has always been a budgeted ending fund balance. And this is something President Bolger and I talked about shortly after Jonathan and I got here, like, we only budget 3%. We don't budget 10%. And so the difference kind of has been in the reserve, and that reserve, it has been set aside to be part of the ending fund balance. So the college has no formal reserve. And so as a start, what I put in there was the stabilization reserve, which still isn't a reserve. It's just a reserve to help with one-time things. So what my hope would be is we get to 29, maybe we have 200, we'll have 300,000 set in as a reserve by then, and we can start really putting a formal reserve aside so that the college has that in the bank, so to say, and then doesn't have to take out loans to make payroll and do things like that. But there is no other formal reserve. Some of the historical that you saw that I did see, you had a reserve for shortfall that was set into that budgetary account in the event that the college could achieve that in cash. So it was, we think we may get this, but we won't. So it was put in reserve for shortfall in case there wasn't enough revenue collected in that year to fund that. But as far as a formal reserve, there isn't one at the college.
Okay, so that just to reiterate, about is actually part of the ending fund balance. $7.5 million that ending fund balance includes that.
Jack, you're on garble again.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah, we hear you better now.
I apologize.
That's perfect. Whatever you're doing is perfect. Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like the reserve amount is already included in the ending fund balance. The ending fund balance includes the reserve plus the 3% unappropriated ending fund balance amount, and that there is no separate $4 million reserve. It's all included in the ending fund balance already.
Yes, all of it is one ending fund balance, correct.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay.
That totals $8 million, or 8 million and some change.
That did at the end of fiscal year 25, yes.
Okay. Other Austin and Jerry, do you have any additional questions for staff?
No, I'm fine until tomorrow at 2:00.
Yeah. There's questions I have. I want to formulate them a little bit better. Yeah, and
Okay.
I might do what you did last time there, Zach, and kind of share it with the president and with the group to do what we did last time to avoid any sort of public meeting violations and so forth, just to make sure that the staff gets the questions as quickly as possible. I'll try to work on those. But yeah, some more questions came up as we were having this discussion. So, and I immensely appreciate the information provided and this great discussion, and the fact that it's in a open meeting setting like this, because it allows for the public to learn too. So that's very good as well. So yeah, so no questions at this time though.
Okay. So Austin and Jerry, it sounds like you both need a little bit more time to process things and get us ready for to make a proposal. Are there any sort of thoughts or things that you would like to share now, or do you want to just go ahead and bring those to the meeting tomorrow with any thoughts that you have for what we might want to put forward to the board so that we can finalize a recommendation during tomorrow's meeting?
Well, overall, I did hear a lot of, and Garrett, thank you again for this presentation. This was very good. And we're basing it off of information that we have here and now. There sounds like there's a lot of information that's like coming in the future too. And President Balder, I know during our agenda setting meeting, we discussed actually having this vote on this item in February as opposed to January, but the motion that was proposed was to bring it back in the January meeting as opposed to a future meeting. And Zach, I believe that you made that motion. So there's parts of me that's wondering if it would be a great benefit for the board, especially with that additional information coming up in February, March. And I believe there was another one that would come later in the spring, that if it would be better for us to be able to do this vote in February as opposed to January. That's just an initial thought that's in my head, but it's not. Anyway, that's just an initial thought in my head, and I just I don't know if we know any risk factors of holding that back a month or anything like that. Like we originally talked about President Bulger, but yeah. Anyway, I that's just like kind of a thought that's in my head currently.
Well, as advisor to the board, I would recommend that you have a conversation with the full board about that on Wednesday.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's going to be the body that decides whether or not to move forward or and so forth, obviously. But yeah, I'm just communicating what's in my head as far as like there's a lot of information to come after we pass something like this. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. So to round us out here, Austin and Jerry, please submit any additional questions that you have to the president and CC the three of us as soon as possible. And then for tomorrow, I'm going to ask that each of you review the draft language that I sent last night and come with proposed edits / proposals or alternatives so that we can come into that meeting with some drafted language and we can come to a consensus and edit needed tomorrow and discuss if we are ready for a vote on Wednesday or if we do need to discuss a contingency to have a little bit more time.
Okay.
All right, thank you
Okay,
very much,
so-
everyone.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts before we close things out?
None on my end.
Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow.